Dipping into the mailbag a little bit, some questions about Brock Purdy. How much is he worth? $50 million per year in the future for Brock Purdy? And how do the 49ers build around Brock Purdy? And does that start now in the 2024 NFL draft? All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you as always at BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker. Crocky 209 actually is what it is now. He changed it up on us, and I cannot remember to say the new handle. It is at Crocky 209 is where you can find him. If you at Eric_Crocker, probably some other guy named Eric Crocker tried to steal that from you. And so Crocky 209 is where you can find Mr. Eric Crocker. You can find Nicholas Winkler at Bay Area Wink, our guest on today's program. Before I give him his proper introduction, I do want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And now let's bring on today's guest.
Winkler, come on down.
Wow. Can't believe it.
Wink, what's happening, man? We were talking off the air about our subject matter for today's show, and I feel like I'm getting a little stir crazy before the draft. It's just that weird period where there's not a lot of news going on, and I'm so deep watching prospects, and then you start to like doubt yourself, and then you go back and watch the prospects again, and then you're doing mock drafts, and you're like, oh, what if you do this? What if you do that? You remember in the movie Waterboy when Coach Klein is like, no, you're going to fake that you're faking. And he starts to lose his mind a little bit. I feel like that's where I'm at right now in this draft process. Nick, where's your head coming into April here as we're getting, almost 2 weeks away from the NFL draft?
Yeah, it's the same, right? It's just the same regurgitated stuff you're hearing over and over. And then you hear a new bit where you're like, oh, yeah, trading up, huh? Possible trading up for an offensive lineman. Okay, yeah, let's explore that for a while. And it's like, we could sit here all day and do that, right? So I'm at that point now where I'm just anxious. I just want it to be here. I want to see what the 49ers do. I want to see what everybody does. It's a fun couple of days as an NFL fan for sure.
All right. Well, let's bring up the trade chart now that you mentioned it. No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to do I do have the trade chart ready if we need it, guys, and hammer out one of these trades. We're going to go to the YouTube comments and some questions that are there recently. Croc, one was directed at you. So I want you to start it because you have been accused of being a hater at times, Croc. I don't know if you know this, but the fans like to accuse a lot of people of a lot of things. And City Feller on
real quick, why do you think that I would be labeled as that? And of course, I know this question is going towards Brock Purdy, but why do you think I would be labeled a Brock Purdy hater?
Were you a Jimmy G hater before? Maybe they just keep adding the label onto you,
good
right?
Point, Wink.
Quarterback, Croc hates him.
I think Croc is just a hater of extremely handsome quarterbacks.
The interesting thing with Jimmy Garoppolo is I gave him a lot of props, and I take a lot of heat for the way I spoke about Jimmy.
Yeah.
Like there were times where I said, man, like, okay, this wasn't great, but man, I love the way he did this. And it's like, there's no way you can say that, Croc. There's no way you can give him props for that. So I think with fans and the label of people being haters, if they agree with your take, you're not. If they disagree, you will be labeled a hater if you just don't see things exactly how they do. Or, in my perspective, as I believe, if you give just a different viewpoint of maybe the same thing that people are talking about, just a different way of looking at it, and that can definitely get you labeled a hater when it comes to 49ers quarterbacks.
Too many people looking for that echo chamber, right? Where it's just the same thing they want to hear over and over. And sometimes, Croc, you come in, you're just like, well, yeah, that, but what about this? And then they're like, oh, hater. Nope. How could you?
Here's the thing is Croc has been 100% behind Purdy.
Yep.
There's not been like he's not said things like he doesn't think Purdy is good, doesn't want Brock Purdy to be a quarterback or anything crazy like that. You'll just point out one thing here or there or say something, and it kind of goes along with this question and some people agree or not necessarily agree, because you haven't talked about this a lot, Croc. That's why I want to talk about it here today, about what Purdy could potentially be paid. But City Feller's question is, Croc, I have a question for you. I respect your opinion. In a couple of recent polls, 49ers fans have been lukewarm about Brock Purdy being the guy to lead the 49ers. Have you seen these polls? Why do you think that is? And how do you feel about Brock Purdy? And I think a lot of the conversations that City Feller here is talking about revolve around this offseason, talking about paying Brock Purdy a ton. I don't think anybody's not behind Brock Purdy being the guy right now for the 49ers, but quarterbacks get paid a lot of money, guys. And Brock Purdy's agent, when he slides that sheet of paper over next offseason, not this offseason, can't get paid quite yet, he's going to slide a sheet of paper over and it's going to say $50 million per year. That's the reality of it. What do you guys think about paying Brock Purdy $50 million per year? Don't talk before you're going to speak. Don't hate. Don't be a hater.
I will not be a hater.
It's coming. Okay.
I will say that I have not seen those polls, but I have been able to gauge the temperature of the fan base in a way that maybe they're not even viewing things that way, but that's how it's coming off to me. We can go back to certain games where when Kyle Shanahan comes out and he's throwing the ball, what's the first thing the fans say to do? Stop throwing the ball, run the ball, you have CMC. And I always say, like, I think that's a little weird. Like, how are you telling me that this guy is great, he's this, he's that, and Kyle believes in him, but man, if Kyle comes out throwing the ball, don't do that. That's not our identity. And I was like, well, if you have this great quarterback, why would you have an issue with that? And I've never had an issue with Kyle Shanahan, whatever his usage of Brock Purdy has been, whether he's come out throwing the ball, because I've seen times where it worked. I've seen times where it hasn't worked. But the moment it doesn't work, the 49ers fan base is screaming at me, get the ball in CMC's hands. Stop throwing the ball with Purdy. I'm just like, man, like, whether you got to live with the results, because I feel like he's a good quarterback. Now, I'm going to get comments about the pushback on my pushback of their comments. And now they're going to say, no, well, 49ers identity is run the ball. Look at this situation. Look at this. Like, look, regardless, it's never going to be perfect. It's not always going to be ideal. I think there's times where Kyle wants to run the ball, but sometimes maybe you have to set it up, or maybe it's a stacked box, whatever it is. If Brock is the guy you think he is, why is anybody upset with him throwing the ball or Kyle putting the ball in his hands? So when you talk about these polls and the 49er fans are lukewarm on how they view him long-term, I would say those polls that I have not seen do align with what I feel like I'm getting from a lot of my mentions. So that's the first part there. Do you guys have any pushback or rebuttal on that?
Well, to me personally, you look at the season, right? Look at what Brock Purdy's done in his season and a half or so as a 49er. Just last season alone, he put up one of the best, if not the best, statistical year ever by 49ers quarterback. So to sit for people to be like, oh no, but he's not worth, what high paid quarterbacks are being paid, that's ridiculous. You're going to have to pay this guy. If he comes out again this year and he even puts up 80% of what he did last year, he's going to demand that kind of money, and he's probably going to get it somewhere. I mean, you talk about potential, right? And all these guys coming out of college, it's a perfect kind of segue right here. We're talking about the draft and, there's this and this, and on paper, he's this and that. Well, on the field, Brock Purdy is an amazing quarterback. He does exactly what is asked of him, and he does it time and time again. And to me, maybe all these people are lukewarm on paying Brock Purdy $50 million, and I wouldn't love to pay anyone $50 million. But Brock Purdy understands what Kyle Shanahan wants to do. And so if they do decide to pay him $50 million going forward after next season, I'm not going to be mad at it. These guys know what they're doing. They know what they have in Brock Purdy. They've seen Garoppolo. They went through the Nick Mullins and the CJ Beathard's, and they've been through quarterbacks that don't get what Kyle's trying to do. This guy does. Brock Purdy gets it. He knows what's happening. So if they pay him, I'm all for it. Let's go.
So with the paying part, that goes to kind of the second part of everything. I have seen people start the conversation of how much will Brock Purdy be paid? And twice now, I have quote tweeted it and just said, he'll make $50+ million. And that's not me saying, oh man, that's amazing. That's not me saying, oh, there's no way you pay him that much, but just what I'm expecting. And the overwhelming amount of comments that I receive from 49er fans and other fan bases, well, they're actually two different ones. 49er fan bases saying, oh no, they won't pay him that much. And I don't even think he's the guy that wants that much money. He will take a team-friendly discount. He doesn't seem like the greedy guy. So there's that person. And then there's the other fan bases that are saying, we hope you guys pay him that much. We hope the 49. And I'm thinking, well, all I've seen so far, and I can only go off of what I've seen, is a quarterback that has been highly efficient, a guy that has made plays, and a guy that in the majority of the 2 years we've seen him play has gone to the conference championship twice now and went to one Super Bowl. So, how is that a guy that anyone would push back on paying top dollars when you have these other guys that are making a ton of money that haven't been able to have anything close to that level of success? And this is not a Rex Grossman thing. I remember when Rex Grossman was playing for the Bears, they went to the Super Bowl. He's doing a lot better than Rex Grossman. All right, he was one of the highest efficient players that I've seen in I don't know how many years. So I might come off of as a hater because I don't think he's Patrick Mahomes. But if you're asking me if I think he's a legit long-term starter for the 49ers and he should be paid as such, I haven't seen anything that shows me that shouldn't be the case with him.
He's not selling enough corn seed to take a discount of $15 million per year. Let's put it that way for Brock Purdy. We'll see. He has to back it up with one more season. If he plays like he did this past year, he's going to make a whole lot of money next year. When you start making a whole lot of money, guys, the way you build your football team changes. So let's talk about how that could look and if that begins now. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose on your first bet. So as soon as you make that first bet, win or lose, you are going to get $150 extra to play with and bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks and yes, to the NFL draft. Tons of NFL draft props, specifically what position the 49ers will select in the first round and a whole lot more. All in the app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So here's what happens when you pay your quarterback a whole bunch of money. The Kansas City Chiefs trade away Tyreek Hill. The Buffalo Bills trade away Stephon Diggs. The Los Angeles Chargers trade away Keenan Allen and lose Mike Williams to free agency. Or did they cut Mike Williams? Did they have to cut him? I can't remember. But they lost Mike Williams this offseason.
I want to say they released him.
I think they might have released him. Yeah, I think he had one more year maybe left on his deal, and he had a pretty big contract. The Cincinnati Bengals, I think they're going to find a way to do a new contract with Jamar Chase, but probably I bet on draft day, if anybody gets traded, it's T. Higgins around the league. So that's what happens. The 49ers are going to have to find a way to build around a very expensive quarterback and a very expensive defensive end, which are two of the most expensive things you can have in the league. The Niners are going to have one of each, and they're glad that they have those guys, and they're going to be glad that it's a good problem to have to pay those positions a lot of money, right? And that's where the 49ers are going to be next offseason. And that big money is not going to hit for a while for Brock Purdy. So it's not going to affect the salary cap this year. It's not going to even affect the salary cap that much probably next year, 2025, but it will start to hit a little bit then because he's making so little now. He's going to get a raise. Croc's dog is upset already about hearing the $50 million amount. He's like, what? You know how much kibble you can get for that?
Calling you a hater.
Yeah, the translation is Croc, stop being a hater. Pay my man some money. So guys, what do we do here? We're building around him with cheaper receivers. Is that where the Niners have to go right now? Offensive line, is Brock Purdy going to elevate younger, cheaper wide receivers? Right. So Wink, where do you go? How do you start building around your cheap quarterback? Could we see not only Debo gone, could we see Ayuk and Debo gone in a new era of San Francisco 49ers offense?
Yeah, I mean, are we talking about Kittle? Are we talking about McCaffrey? I mean, those are guys that are getting paid a lot of money as well.
Trent Williams is getting paid a lot of money too. They're not going to pay the top running back, top offensive lineman, two of the top quarterbacks, top tight end at the same time. Not going to happen.
You just can't do it. And they're able to do it now because of the Brock Purdy contract situation, right? So that is something they will have to address. And what do they do with it, right? I mean, where is Kyle going to look? Is he going to look for just some inexpensive wide receivers? That's probably, to me, what Kyle will do, because he'll spend money on tight ends because he loves his big tight ends. They tried to overpay for the backup tight end, for the Detroit Lions, and Detroit's like, oh, the Niners want him? We should bring him back and pay him that same amount of money. Let's do that. So to me, he's going to draft a bunch of running backs. He's going to draft a bunch of wide receivers. And that's, I think, where Kyle's going to go with it in the future, because you got to protect your quarterback, right? If you're paying him $50 million, you got to protect him even more. So you're going to probably go out and find another left tackle. Hopefully they can address it this year in the draft, get a right tackle, and then eventually move him over once Trent Williams leaves. But will that work? Will that be enough? Will Brock Purdy then be, oh, he's just a guy? Now that he doesn't have Ayuk and Kittle and McCaffrey and Debo, and then it's like, oh no, how long are we stuck with this big contract? So you can understand why the fans might be like, maybe don't pay him all this money, because you got to take from everywhere else in order to do it.
But now, again, my only pushback on that is, and maybe I'm not as close to those circles. Have you ever heard anybody say, don't pay Josh Allen? Have they said, don't pay Patrick Mahomes, right? Now, again, I am mentioning him with the likes of who we feel like are the great quarterbacks. But when you look at the season that Brock had, I thought he had a really, really good year. And maybe we'll never view him in the same tier as those guys, but it looks like he's trending towards being in just kind of like that next tier. So right. Why is he a guy that we say, oh, you can't pay him, when you don't say those same things about other quarterbacks? I said the same thing about throwing the ball. I have never, and again, maybe I'm just not as close in those circles, but I watch a lot of football. I listen to a lot of different things. I have never, ever, ever heard anybody tell Patrick Mahomes or Andy Reid to stop throwing the ball with Patrick Mahomes. I've never heard that. I've never heard them tell even Josh Allen. And Josh Allen does stupid stuff. And I still haven't heard them say, stop throwing the ball with Josh Allen, even though he does stupid stuff, right? So why does Brock get that? Why does he get don't throw the ball? Why does he get, oh, you can't pay him that much? You got to figure out how to pay him and still be able to put a really good team around him. But I don't think that any part of the conversation should be don't pay Brock Purdy.
I think the answer to that is that, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, those guys, they don't have the offensive player of the year behind them, right? So I think that's more maybe what people are trying to get at, is like, we got to get McCaffrey more involved. Not necessarily like, oh, all right, Brock, relax. Like, we don't need you to do anything, but maybe let's just find a way to get Christian McCaffrey, the most electric player, not named Lamar Jackson, in the NFL. Let's get the ball in his hands. Let's figure out a way to do it. Because when you look at guys like Mahomes and guys like Allen, yeah, they got paid and people want them to get paid. But then you look at Daniel Jones, right? Like, the Giants are on the hook for a ton of money for a guy they probably don't even want to be their starting quarterback going in this year. So it's definitely risky to invest in a guy who's only had a year and a half of success in the league.
I think the best comp right now for what Brock's contract would be, let's say he's a free agent right now, or he was entering the last year of his deal now instead of next year, the Kirk Cousins contract that just got signed. Now, Kirk was a free agent, so there was an open market bidding here. If he just stayed in Minnesota, maybe it'd have been a little bit less. But he got 4 years, $180 million. $50 million of that was guaranteed. Now he's older, 35, coming off an Achilles injury. But I think as far as how Brock Purdy is viewed and what he would make as a free agent, I think it's probably similar, and probably he'd make a little bit more because he's younger and his level of play has been higher than Kirk Cousins, even though Kirk Cousins has done it for longer. Like, Kirk Cousins didn't come out of the gate this hot as Brock Purdy did, right? So that's probably, and that's what, just under 50 mil a year, right? So yeah, 45 mil per year. I don't know that you get Brock Purdy for any less than that.
It's funny because, there's all these people.
It's not like you're paying extra either.
Right. But you got all these people that are, saying, oh, he's not worth that. He's not worth that. But how many teams out there right now would pay $45 to $50 million a year to get a quarterback that's been in 2 straight conference championship games, that led a team to a Super Bowl, that just wish they had a quarterback that stayed on the field, all year long?
The Atlanta Falcons would have this offseason, right? And
this is not 2009, 2010 Mark Sanchez, who went to back-to-back conference championship games.
You're right. Yep.
Or it was very clear. It's all, wasn't it, Sean Green and Danian Tomlinson and then that great defense, right? Mm-hmm. This is a guy who, when need be, he has been able to make plays. Now, again, if we didn't see what we saw late in the playoffs where, man, he fought through some adversity in the playoffs and had to do different things that, okay, I maybe have to play beside myself a little bit, make these plays with my legs or make certain throws, and maybe a ball has to go off a face mask and be caught. But we saw him in a very adverse situation and be able to overcome it, something I was asking for, screaming for throughout the season. Where it's like, well, does everything have to be perfect for Brock to win a game? Like, does everything have to be more ideal? And then he showed in the playoffs, like, nah, Croc, I got you. I know you want to see this. Here it goes. Mark Sanchez was not that, but he went to back-to-back conference championship games. So, you're mentioning going to back-to-back and what that should mean, but I think it should carry a little bit more weight seeing the 49ers, down against the Packers, a big comeback win against the Detroit Lions. And I felt like a lot of plays that he made in those games definitely contributed to that.
100%.
Next, we got questions about wide receivers, offensive linemen, and there's a tie in there with how you build around Brock Purdy going forward for the 49ers, starting with the 2024 draft. Next. Locked On has launched the first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, plus our national shows covering every league. You're going to see me and Croc on there. You're going to see the Peacock and Williamson NFL show and tons of others, no matter the biggest stories in all the sports. You're going to find it streaming live 24/7 on YouTube and Amazon Fire TV. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available, and make sure you are subscribed there on YouTube, along with being subscribed here to Locked On 49ers. All right, I've got a question here about the offensive line in the draft. And Joseph says, I'm getting so tired of people saying we need to replace the right tackle. McKivitz only started 1 year. Give a guy a chance, and 1 year is not a chance. He did well. Let him learn and get experience. Not many linemen come out perfect. All these fans want perfection from game one onto every game. It's not going to happen. So what do you guys think? And this might be part of the Brock Purdy conversations about wanting perfection as well, right? And offensive line. So you're on the clock at 31. Joseph's saying, don't even worry about McKivitz. He's fine. Give him another year. What do you guys think about that?
Is McKivitz going to slide over when we lose our left tackle? Like, is he that kind of player? Or do you shoot for the moon and try to get a real high upside guy that, maybe he doesn't start right away at right tackle, but he's got that kind of, maybe he backs up left tackle all season long, learns from the great one, the silverback, and then all of a sudden, you do have somebody to plug in there. So for me, I still think it's a glaring need, despite, McKivitz had a good year. Like, it was good, but was it, oh, wow, we don't need to worry about this position at all? Probably not.
I think with whatever that extension was that the 49ers put on McKivitz, they kind of told you how they feel about him long-term. They don't view him as a guy that's a long-term starter. So if you don't view him as a long-term starter, he is a guy that you would likely want to improve over. Now, they also have set it up in a way to where he is a guy that has started for a year. He is a guy that they do see a certain level of value in. And based on that value, we're okay with him having to go in as a starter. If we can replace him and get better production out of that position, then they 100% will. But I don't think they are as pressed to do so as a lot of the 49er fans are, where it's just like, you just 100%, you have to go tackle no matter what. I don't think that's the case with the 49ers. I think they like McKivitz. I don't think they love McKivitz. If you have an opportunity to get better, then you do. But if he has to play again, then hey, let's see if he can build off of what he did in his first year being a full-time starter.
Yeah, McKivitz is their floor, and I think they will go into the draft and try to find someone who compete with him and be better. And maybe he doesn't beat him out in year one. Maybe that player's the starter in year two. But McKivitz, it's not like McKivitz was a rookie starting last year either. He's in year 4, right? And so you kind of know what a guy is at that point. I don't know if I would expect better play, and he did as well as I think you should expect for who McKivitz is. And who knows? Maybe you get a tackle and McKivitz can play some guard. Maybe you think that Brendel could be improved upon. So Feliciano moves over and plays center because he's played center in his career as well. And so then one guy at tackle moves everybody else over and you get better. So there's a lot of ways to get better, and tackle's the hardest one to find. And without any first round picks in recent history, the 49ers haven't had an opportunity. And you look at this draft and you start getting past the pick at 31. And, there's a couple of guys that might be starting tackles, but it's a lot easier to find interior guys than tackles. So that's why I think tackle's the spot. And guess what? You find out that Colton McKivitz is not the guy, and you didn't do anything in the offseason, and now you're sitting there in week 3. You're definitely not going to upgrade the offensive tackle spot there. Maybe you can try to go to the trade deadline and do something, but you don't want to be stuck in that spot if you're the 49ers. So, it's acceptable, but you want to be better than that. That's the way I would view Colton McKivitz in this.
Guys, did you see the 49ers throw out the first pitch for the home opener for the Giants the other day?
I did, and I mean, come on, guys. You're pro athletes. You've had to throw footballs in practice. How different is throwing a baseball to where you can't even get it close? I mean, Fred Warner, I'm looking at you. Like, you're supposed to be the leader of the defense. You got to put the ball in the glove, man.
At least get it close enough where the guy can make a play.
It might be the pressure. I played in like this, what's it called? Like, it's like a basketball alumni game. So it's like all the old heads from my high school versus, all these other high schools that are out there. They're like 2 different high schools being represented, but everybody's older. Yeah. And when I'm just messing around at the gym and I want to shoot free throws, I'm knocking down, I'll knock down 8 out of 10 free throws. My son and I, we always have competitions. Who can have the highest percentage with free throw shots, just doing little things like that with them. When I was in that alumni game and there's all these families watching and I got to that free throw line, it was a little different because I'm not used to being in that position. Yeah. And that might be Warner and Debo where, they've thrown the ball plenty of times. And when there's no pressure or nobody watching or you're just throwing to your buddies, hey, whatever, we could throw this ball back and forth. But when you only have one shot and it's nationally televised, it's going to be on social media, and you got thousands of baseball fans watching, and you've seen everybody else mess up, like all the other celebrities, might get you a little tense, a little tight a little bit. And we might have seen that from those guys.
We definitely did.
They went back to the rubber, and they were on the mound. And the mound automatically gives you that throwing plane, so I think it makes you want to throw the ball more into the ground if you're used to throwing off flat ground as well. So, I'm not trying to make excuses. It was, you gotta have a better attempt than that. But there could be some reasons why. And we had a wish watch, right, Wink?
Yeah. Shout out to at Mr. Billups 22 who tagged me on Twitter for the wish watch. I caught it live too, though. Mitch Wishnowski standing out there in right field, punted one into McCovey Cove, over the right field wall, almost hit a kayak, or almost landed it in a dude's kayak, like just in form already. That was basically a no-look punt, and Wishnowski, of course, nailed it because he's the best punter in the NFL, hands down.
Yeah, well, look, we already know he's a multi-sport star, so not surprised he's good on the baseball field as well. At least he didn't have to kick a baseball, right? That might have not have gone as well. Kicking a football. Yeah. Dude, that could sink a kayak. That's coming down with how high a punter kicks the ball. That's coming down with some serious RPMs, and those footballs are kind of heavy. So, yeah, good thing it didn't go in the kayak, I think.
You'd see it caught the guy off guard a little bit. He was not expecting a football to fly into the cove.
So, building around Brock Purdy, guys, you keep the offensive line a strength, right? Or build on the offensive line, and you got to stay cheap at key positions, and you have to. And this is, I think, the number one key. And this is what we're doing here in 2024 in the draft, in my opinion, what you're going to continue to do in the 2025 draft. You have to find starting caliber players that aren't the most expensive at their position in the NFL, because the 49ers have too many of those.
Yep.
And you're going to have some extra money to pay an offensive lineman once, because, it's not like, okay, so Trent Williams retires. Well, his salary goes away too. So you could spend some of that and maybe get another offensive lineman, right? So it's not like you're going to go from Hall of Famer to zero. You're going to have something there, but you need to have some more players already in hand, already developed up and kind of ready to go. Same thing with wide receiver. Whether you choose Debo or Ayuk long term, you're not going to pay them both. So you got to have young, cost-controlled, starting caliber players there. Whenever Kittle's done, whenever running backs can be done, it can be done tomorrow, right? You fall off a cliff at running back in the NFL. How long is Christian McCaffrey going to play? You got to have young players ready to go. Easier to replace running back than some other positions around the NFL. But you're already paying Fred Warner and George Kittle, and if you start and obviously the biggest ones are Nick Bosa and Brock Purdy. So once you're paying Brock Purdy and you have those big contracts, you've got to draft starting caliber players. And that's where, the Trey Lance trade didn't hurt the 49ers in the short term. It didn't hurt the 49ers with quarterback because they found a quarterback. But where it hurt them is other places on their roster where they should have had 3 first-round caliber players already ready to go and developed and ready to play. And they didn't have that. So they're kind of behind the 8 ball there. And so they got to hit on these first and second round picks and find starting caliber players that are on rookie contracts. Who that is, I don't know. Croc and I are going to put together our big board. Go to OT with BP, Overtime with Brian Peacock, my new YouTube channel. We're going to be able to spend a little bit more time building a big board that we're going to utilize here on Locked On 49ers. We're also going to be going live during the draft, probably hours long. OT with BP, also on Eric Crocker's channel as well. So look out for that. Look out for Wink anywhere you find Winks. And Nick, always a pleasure when you join the show. Appreciate you, man, as always.
You bet. My pleasure, guys.
And there was something else I needed to tell the listeners out there. Oh, yeah. Thanks for making us your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Croc and I back tomorrow. Locked On 49ers.
See ya.
I can't. I just can't.